Hello everyone. So if you found this video, you probably just delved into some random part of YouTube, found a video with 0 views, and decided, oh well, NHL Power Rankings, I guess I can get down with that. Welcome. My name is Kevin. I am the last Caniac here on YouTube. That name will become a little more apparent in a little bit, but in general, what this is just a channel where I'm going to be talking about the NHL. I'm not a very experienced NHL watcher. I've only really been following the NHL hardcore for about maybe a month now, and maybe not even that. I've been a big fan of the league, but I mean, I've never really gotten into following it hardcore until very recently. And yeah, so hopefully this will be of interest to some people, and they enjoy what they see. And if you don't, I mean, that's fine. Just leave me some feedback, and I'm totally up to making changes or doing anything. Cool. So about this channel, I mean, I sort of just went over this, but the Last Caniac, it's basically a place where myself, a novice NHL follower, and a longtime Hurricanes fan, as you can see here by my sweatshirt, I'm just going to discuss the state of the NHL, rank random things, delve into other topics maybe, who knows. I call myself the Last Caniac because sort of my feeling as a Raleigh resident of a very long time is that since there aren't really there aren't really a lot of Hurricanes fans left, and I mean I'm not even that big of a Caniac, but I guess like I like the Hurricanes probably more than the average person around here, so yeah, the Last Caniac it is. Thought it had a decent ring to it, I guess. So I'm Kevin. I was born in Connecticut. I was raised in Raleigh. I think I moved to Raleigh when I was 1, and I'm now a college student at NC State, which is also in Raleigh. I moved from Connecticut to Raleigh, ironically the same season the Hartford Whalers moved from Connecticut to Raleigh and became the Hurricanes. So basically, I've always had this sort of kinship with the Hurricanes franchise, and it's always just been like the team that I'm not even just like want to root for, but like have to root for. If I'm rooting for anyone else, like it's just it's just wrong, you know. Recently being a fan of the Hurricanes has obviously been a time of misery, but I mean, I'm somebody who feels that like the year that they're going to come back is just around the corner, and all fans should have to experience lows in order to get back to the highs. I mean, I don't really like fan bases that only get highs because they're just very spoiled. So yeah, dealing with the lows is just part of the game. So what this video is going to be is basically I'm going to be ranking the 31 NHL teams from worst to best. In my opinion, this is all my opinion. You guys can totally tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me what I did wrong, but this is all my opinion. This is based on where things stand through the beginning of February 3rd, Saturday, February 3rd. I'm filming this as some games have already finished. We had a bunch of 1 o'clock games today. A few 7 o'clock games are already done. And we've got some more games playing right now, but I'm filming this presenting that the games have not happened. Maybe I'll discuss what happened today for the 7 or so games that are done, but um, in general, I'm not going to be doing that. The rankings are fluid, and hopefully I'm going to be able to do these every week, and they'll change based on the performances throughout weeks of play of each team. Obviously, each team has these set weeks that they're either going to go become a really good team, be a really bad team, or just find this place in the middle. And what I take into account mainly is record, win-loss, OTLs, goals for, goals against, the amount of games each team has played, which at this point is close to even. The determination factor, which is not really a tangible factor, but it's something that I think a lot of teams just sort of, I feel like a lot of players take for granted sometimes, and I think that it's something that just like the drive to win is just something that's very important in the league. Pedigree, basically teams that have just always been around, always been good. Among other things, there's a bunch of other factors, just like X factor or whatever. But yeah. Anyways, moving into the list. 31st, probably no surprise to anybody in here, the Arizona Coyotes. I mean, they've got 12 wins in 51 games. That's not ideal. That's far from ideal. They haven't been good in a really long time. I don't think they've been to the postseason since what, 2012. They were really good back then, but I mean, 6 years later, and they've got 33 points in 51 games. That's not great. Um, Now I don't think Arizona's going to move. I've heard rumblings that they could possibly be one of the teams discussed to move to Seattle. I don't think they're going to be that team, but anything can happen. So hopefully Coyotes fans keep their team down in Arizona, but we shall see. They need to start playing a little better to really ensure that. So at number 30, we've got the Buffalo Sabres. I remember way back in the day, the Hurricanes used to be pretty big rivals with the Sabres because like the Sabres were like another team that was like consistently had these like random really good years in the East with the Hurricanes, and I remember we played them in the '06 East Finals. That was a real battle. Um, but now the Sabres and like the Hurricanes have just really been slipping. I don't think they've been to the postseason since 2011. They're in the hunt for the draft lottery, so I guess that's a good thing. And if they really want to go for the draft lottery, which I think they're going to, I don't think they're playing exactly for it, but I know they're going to trade Evander Kane in the at the trade deadline. So I mean, they need to really just try and find something that they can get for Evander Kane. Somebody in the league is going to pay big money to get Kane onto their squad, and I think that if they do that, at least the Sabres will have some pieces to start building. But, I mean, they need to start doing something. Right now, the Atlantic Division is pretty garbage outside of the top three teams. And the Sabres are at the bottom of that, haven't even cracked 40 points yet. So, I mean, they need to start playing better hockey. Number 29, Ottawa Senators. This is the first of our Canadian teams. They've got to start winning games in general, but the close games in specific, I think, their goal differential is not awful. It's not great, but it's not awful. Um, and they're decent at home. They're 10, 11, and 5 at home, but they're 6, 13, and 4 on the road. I mean, that's just not something a team that's going to contend is going to be able to do. Somehow the Sens made the East Final last year, and I mean, watching this Senators team, I just don't know how. They really need to hope for the best in the draft, hope for some development, and see what happens coming forward. I mean, 41 points, not great. Not going to win any conference finals. They're not going to get to the East Final at 41 points in 50-some games. Um, at 28, we got the Canadiens, the second Canadian team, among the worst of the bad Canadian teams. There are a lot of bad Canadian teams this year, but the Canadiens themselves are actually right up there among the worst. They've got a big fall off from last year's Atlantic winning efforts. I mean, somehow they got 103 points from winning the Atlantic last year. That's nuts. And now they're not even cracking 50 yet, and that's not ideal. 46 points. That's not great. Maybe they need to start thinking about a rebuild. I mean, if the rest, they can almost, they're in the hunt to potentially get to the playoff spots. I mean, right now the line is at 57 in the East. There's a lot of teams bunched up there, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get there this late in the game. But maybe they need to start thinking about a rebuild, seeing if anybody's willing to pay for Price or for Pacioretty, get some draft picks, try and start a little rebuild and see what they can do with some picks or some players. Otherwise, they're just going to be sitting in the same spot they've been, down near the bottom. Number 27, we got another Canadian team, this time in the Western Conference. We got the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks are not doing fantastic. Um, 48 points. What the hell, West Canada? I mean, at least in comparison to Ottawa and Montreal, the Canucks were bad last year, so like their pedigree is definitely lower. They've got a decent goal differential, minus 29 for a team that's 21 and 30, I guess, wins to losses. If they can start stringing together some games, the problem is they're in the West, so it's just like it's tough for a team in the West to really make a push because the West is much deeper than the East in terms of like where the playoff line is right now. I think the playoff line right now sits at 60. You've got, yeah, I think you got around 60 points to get to the West playoffs, so 61, yes, and you really got to fight, and they're only at 48, so I really don't know if they're going to be able to get it done. They're letting a lot of teams win it on their ice, 10 and 16, 10, 13, and 3 at home. That's not great. They're better on the road, but they've got to start winning at home. Number 26, we've got the Edmonton Oilers. Again, we got the good Canadian teams gone bad. I mean, the Oilers last year were a playoff team, and now they're sitting way back in the West. Say one of 3 teams in the West that's completely out of it, with Vancouver and Arizona. I don't think that the Oilers have a chance. Again, they're another team that needs to capitalize on home ice. I mean, they are not playing well at home. They're coming into today 11, 13, and 2 at home. You got to make it more advantageous. You got to play. I mean, I don't know if you need more fans there. You need to do promotional stuff, but you've got to make home ice count for something. Otherwise, it's just going to be every game. You're going to be basically just starting neutral at home, and then you go away and you lose. I guess they've only played 50 games in comparison to some other teams. That's not bad. 48 points in 50 games is okay. But again, I just think the West is too deep for them to really make a push to get to the 70s, 80s, high 90s for points. At 48 points already. We'll see. Number 25, we have the Florida Panthers. At least they've got arguably the best logo in the league. I mean, I guess Vegas has a really good logo too, but I really like the Panthers logo. Now, the Panthers are in the crappy Atlantic, and they're not really taking advantage of that. The Atlantic is really bad this year, and yet the Panthers aren't really capitalizing. 11 and 11 at home. I guess that's decent. The problem is are they playing like Florida's going to be their home, or are they going to get moved somewhere because they've just not got the pedigree or the interest from fans? Like, if they're going to have more years like they're having right now, where they're not really postseason bound, like, what does it matter? What does it matter? We'll see. Number 24. I really, 10 years ago, you told me the Red Wings would ever be this low. I really don't think I would have believed you. I mean, I remember when the Red Wings used to be the one team in the league that you could always count on to be near the top. Back when they were in the West, now they're in the East. They're in the Atlantic again. Another team in the Atlantic that is not taking advantage of being in the Atlantic. They need to rebuild, and they need to rebuild fast. They need new players. They need new stuff. They need whatever they need to try and just make a push, because the Atlantic is not a tough division, really. I mean, you got Toronto up there who's got 65 points coming into the day, and they were really not getting a lot. They're getting a lot of those points off just the crappy teams in the Atlantic. So, I mean, Detroit needs to take advantage of having Montreal and Ottawa and Buffalo. I think the problem with them this year is they're winning games, and then they're losing games, and then they're winning games, and then they're losing games. They need to start consistently winning, otherwise they're not going to be able to push for the postseason hockey. And it sucks to be a Red Wings fan in that case. Number 23, New York Islanders. The Islanders are interesting. They've got to really start trying to get more, they're freely taking a lot of losses despite being up in the hunt. I mean, it just looks like they're getting smacked around in some of these losses, not even like putting up a fight. Like, at least make a competitive game out of it. Don't just let other teams bully you. They need to improve on the road. It says they are 12, 14, and 2 on the road. That is 12 and 16, so that's not great. They're better at home, 14 and 11, so that's fine, but they need to start really playing on the road. They've got a high-scoring offense. They got 177 goals for, which is pretty high, but they don't really have a lot of defense. The goalie situation might not be working out for them. Maybe they need to think about some trades if they really want to push for the postseason. They need to trade for a goalie, trade for some deep defenders around the deadline. I mean, the deadline is rapidly approaching. If they want to push for that postseason, they've got to make something happen. Number 22 is another team I didn't really think would be that low. I mean, the West is too competitive, and the Blackhawks aren't. The Blackhawks aren't competitive. I mean, 55 points in 51 games. The West is too strong for 55 points to be cutting it. Is it worth it for them to start looking into trades? Is it worth it for them to start looking into a rebuild? I mean, they're not consistent enough against the bad teams to perform well in the West. They need to figure out something to help make it work. Otherwise, they're just going to be sitting at the bottom of the West, and that's not ideal right now. They're the bottom of the Central, and I think it shows in their play. Number 21, New York Rangers. The slightly superior of the New York teams, I would say, right now. It's tough to say, though, because both of them are pretty even. Now, the Rangers did get to the second round last year, which is pretty surprising looking at them now. I mean, they've been on a bit of a downslope. They have really, really good home ice advantage. They've got 17, 9, and 3 at home. But when they go on the road, they can lose to anybody. I mean, they could go to Arizona and lose 8-0, for all I know. Like, they need to play on the road like they do at home. Otherwise, there's no postseason coming. Here's where we might get some controversy. Number 20, Philadelphia Flyers. Not just a football city. I mean, they're back in the mix again. Now, I do think an issue with Philly is they're not really scoring a lot of goals. They got 52 games, 150 goals. Sorry, no, that's wrong. They've got 51 games and 147 goals. That's not a lot of goals for a team that's trying to compete for a playoff spot. They're not very consistent on the road, and they're letting bad teams be competitive with them. They can't let that happen if they want to fight for postseason hockey. It's just not an option. Otherwise, they're just not going to get there. So this is probably the bias coming in here, but at number 19, I got the Carolina Hurricanes. And this is something I'm surprised to see. I'm always just of the mindset that the Canes are going to suck because they always do. But this finally looks like the season where Raleigh could actually get postseason hockey. The problem is the Canes are very inconsistent, and they just lost Sebastian Aho for a little stretch, and that didn't help. Right now we're going into game 4 of an 8-game home stretch, and they've really got to take advantage of home ice. They need goals, and they need to make sure that home ice counts. I also think that the Hurricanes need to take advantage of trades going into the deadline. Now, I do think they're competitive for a spot in the postseason. So I think that, trading away a Derek Ryan or a Cam Ward, who are both going to be UFAs at the end of the year, I think is risky. Just because they're in the mix for a spot, and they need Cam Ward, because Scott Darling is no Cam Ward. But it's tough. We'll definitely see how they continue to play throughout the year. It's definitely worth looking into trades. I don't think they need to go out and get an Evander Kane, But I do think they need to go out and look for somebody who's going to really beef up that offense and make it a little more clean. Because, I mean, 142 goals is not enough in this league at this point in the year. Hopefully, I'm going to start getting some more in the win columns. Number 18, Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah, they're in the Metro, and the Metro is tough. There are a lot of teams putting up good points in the Metro right now. Now, the Blue Jackets are probably the best of those teams at the moment. They're putting up some more goals, or they're not putting up a lot of goals, but they're keeping goals out of the net. And they're doing a really good job of just getting wins, getting in the win column. You can see 27, 20, and 4. That's more wins than losses. That's what you want from a team that's going to make the postseason. Now, it's tough because Columbus has never been to the postseason back-to-back in the time they've been in the league, I think. That might be true. I'm not sure exactly. And this year, they look to be in position at the moment, but it is very, very close. And the Metro could flip at any point. They really need to clutch out games against divisional foes. I know today they just lost to the Islanders 4-3 today in New York, so that is not a good loss to have. The Islanders closing 2 points on them, and the Blue Jackets getting none. That's not great. But they're still favored right now. They got 58 points over the Islanders 57. That's not bad. And road play. I mean, they just lost on the road in New York. They really got to start playing on the road a little bit better. 11-15 is not 11-14 is not great. 17, another Canadian team here, the Calgary Flames. Now, I remember I probably already upset every Canadian fan by now, other than the one fan base, but we'll see. Flames were really, really far up there back not too long ago. They've lost their past 6, and that's not ideal. I mean, they are picking up points in some of those losses. Look, the last 10 they're 4-2-4, but they've lost their last 6. So they're getting some points here and there, but they're not performing well enough to really get themselves into the postseason in the West. I feel like they have the will to get there, but I feel like even if they do get to the postseason, they're just going to go down in the first round. I just don't think this team, the Flames, have enough fight in them right now to really push for it. And that's unfortunate. I want to see Canadian teams do well. Number 16, LA Kings. LA Kings is another team that's starting to take a little bit of a nosedive. The West is really competitive, and the Kings with 59 points sit behind Anaheim and San Jose in the Pacific, and behind Dallas and Minnesota and the Avs and Colorado for the wild cards. So they are not in playoff position right now. They seem to have really good goaltending. They've got 126 goals against, which is very few. But some of the best teams in the league can take LA down, and that's just not something a postseason team is going to be able to do. They can't afford to get injured. They can't afford to lose Jonathan Quick again. They need Jonathan Quick to really push for the postseason and for more hockey. But we'll see. LA is a shell of what they've been when they've been cup contenders and cup winners. Hopefully they can get back there, though. Anaheim Ducks at number 15. Last year's squad got to the cup final, or the Western Conference Final. This year, they definitely look weakened. Right now, they're clinging to a postseason spot just ahead of LA. They're in a competitive Pacific, and the issue that Anaheim has is they've lost 10 overtime games. They're the only team in the league that's lost more than, they're just double-digit overtime or shootout losses. They need to start closing games out and getting the 2 points. They can't settle for the 1. They've also 11-16 on the road. That is not great. They gotta close those games out. There's not a lot of wild card room for teams in the Pacific right now. They need to beat Los Angeles. They need to beat Calgary. They need to take advantage of Arizona, Vancouver, and Edmonton, and they've gotta win games wherever it matters. Because they're not going to even stay in that postseason hunt if they can't win some games down the stretch. Number 14, Colorado Avalanche. We've not even hit 60 games and got 12 more points than they got last season. Oh man, it's crazy. Now it's tough for them though because the battle for the wild card spots in the West right now is really starting to heat up. Dallas and Minnesota are clinging to those spots, but the Avs are right there. They need to take advantage of the easy games that they have left on their schedule. They need to make sure that they're scoring goals. They've got 164 goals in 50 games, which isn't bad. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. And they got to take advantage of home ice. They're 18 and 8 at home. That is insane. Take advantage of that home ice. Make sure you get more in the win column than in the loss column, and make sure that you're scoring enough, especially against the bad teams, and you'll be able to move up and potentially take a playoff spot from Minnesota or Dallas. Number 13, another West team, San Jose Sharks. The Sharks are definitely a good team in the league, and they're definitely helped by the Pacific not being as strong. They're helped by Edmonton, Vancouver, and Arizona all being bad teams. Right now, they do need to start beating Calgary and LA. Otherwise, there's not going to be a lot there for them. If they even get to the postseason, what's it going to take to push beyond round one? I mean, they've been past round one before. They know what it's like. They've still got Thornton. Thornton knows what it's like. He knows how to motivate those younger guys. But what's it going to take to get them past round one? They've got to make home ice matter. They're 14-7-3 at home. That is pretty good in this league. And they got to make it matter. They got to make home ice be worth it. Otherwise, they're not going anywhere. Number 12, we got the Dallas Stars. They have a very potent offense with good goaltending. They got 159 goals through their 52 games. That's not bad. That's okay. They're really good at home, 17-8-1 at home. Only 12-11-3 on the road, which means they've really got to start improving there. They're only 12-11-3 there, and if they're solidly in a they're not solidly in a postseason spot, but they're in one right now. And if they get that wild card spot, at least they're in there, and they've got a chance. Now the issue is, can they get to the Blues, who sit 5 points ahead or 3 points ahead? Can they get to the Blues? I don't know. It's tough because St. Louis is playing some good hockey. They're winning games that matter, and they're doing a good job at it. And St. Louis is another team that's really good at home. And if Dallas has to go to them, or if Dallas has to go to them even in the postseason, it's not going to be great. I don't think Dallas will, because Dallas is probably going to get a wild card and play Winnipeg or Vegas, but we'll see. Number 11, back to the East, we've got the New Jersey Devils. They're not as good as they've been this year. They're still pretty hellacious. But they've really got to take advantage of the Metro foes and try and steal points from the Metro foes. If they allow Metro teams to win games, that's not great for them. Today they beat Pittsburgh 3-1. That's a good win. They passed Pittsburgh back. They've got a point on Pittsburgh now. They got a 3-game winning streak. They forced Pittsburgh to lose. That's a big one they needed. That's one they needed to have. They're only 3 out of 11 games in extra time. That's 3 out of 11. That's not good. New Jersey really needs to start closing out games in overtime. They've lost 8 in overtime or shootouts. They've got to close those games out and get the 2 points instead of the 1. They can catch Washington if they play well. But right now, Washington looks better, and right now I would say Pittsburgh looks better, even after today. Number 10, Minnesota Wild. Now, the Wild are coming off a big win against Vegas, which I think shows that they can beat a lot of the good teams in the West. Now, the question is, are they going to be able to beat enough of the bad teams or enough of the good teams in February and March to really lock in that postseason slot? They can't afford to get 1-point games. They've got to go for the wins every time. They're 28, 18, and 5, which is good. The more they get in the win column, the better off they're going to be. They need to take advantage of being at home. 18 and 8 at home. That is really good. They need to keep taking advantage of being at home. Otherwise, it's not going to work out for them. They're not going to get in. We'll see. Number 9, St. Louis Blues. 65 points already. That is fantastic. They've got a slight edge right now over Dallas and Minnesota. They need to hold. They need to hold on to that third spot because they do not want to sink into that wild card hunt with teams like the Avalanche, like the Kings, like the Flames, maybe even the Blackhawks. They're playing a really good defensive play right now. They've got 134 goals against. That's good. But they've got to keep stopping the puck, and they've got to start really scoring. They can't let close games get away from them either. They've got to make sure that they're winning games when they're close. Otherwise, they're not going to get the job done. They got to head into the postseason prepared and ready. Because the West is going to be tough. Number 8, Pittsburgh. Sadly, the Penguins. I'm not a big Pens fan. Sadly, the Pens are always relevant. But, you know, that just is what it is. I don't think they're cup-winning team this year. But they are playing a lot better. They're in a tough division. They've got to try and hold into one of those top 3 spots. They've got to make sure they're beating the Columbuses, Phillies, Rangers, Islanders, Carolinas of the world. They've got to make sure they're doing that. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to stay up there with New Jersey and Washington in those top 3 spots. If they can just stay top 3, just lock it in, they'll be okay. They've got 14 games left at home, and they're 19-7-1 at home. That's fantastic. The better they do at home, the more likely they are to get home ice advantage in the playoffs, and that's exactly what they need to do. Not as good a road team. They're only 10-17 on the road. That's not great at all. They really got to make advantage of the home games. We'll see how they go. Maple Leafs, 30-18-5. The Atlantic sucks, so the Maple Leafs seem to be locked into a playoff spot. They are 15 points ahead of Detroit for third right now. Now, they've got to stay aggressive, and they've got to really start scoring. Keep scoring goals. They've got a really good offense, and they just got to keep scoring. They've also got to start winning more games in extra time. They're only 4-5 in overtime or shootouts, and they've got to start winning those games. Number 6, Capitals. They're going back to the postseason, I would say. 65 points. Unless they really collapse, they're going to make it back to the postseason. But how deep is that postseason run going to go? Ovechkin's playing great, but is the rest of the team up to the par? Is the rest of the team up to the test? They've got to make sure they hold off Pittsburgh. They've got to make sure they hold off New Jersey. They've got to make sure they hold off the entire Atlantic. You want that division title because they want home ice. They're 19-8 at home thus far this year. That's really good. They want to hold on to that as long as possible. Number 5, the second-ranked team in the East. We've got the Boston Bruins. 68 points through 49 games. Coming into the year, I really don't think anybody thought that any team would be able to battle the Lightning in the East. And for a long time, it looked to be that way. But the Bruins have proven to be in there, in the mix. I would say the Bruins are a very decent position to make it to the Cup Finals if the Lightning go out somewhere. I do think the Bruins are probably in the mix to at least get to the East Final. The tough thing is if like Washington and Pittsburgh are playing really good hockey heading into the postseason. The Bruins have been hot now, and if they start to cool off, it could end up being like a Pittsburgh or Washington or Toronto getting into the Cup or to the East Final with Tampa or somebody, but we'll see. They've only got 120 goals allowed, which is the fewest in the league. That's fantastic. They've got to keep that up. Number 4, Nashville Predators. Um, 5 years ago, the Predators might not have. I don't even think a lot of people would say the Predators would be around now. Now they're a relevant team in the West. They're going to go into the postseason ranked very highly. They've got a great defense. They've got 125 goals allowed. But they've got to start scoring a little more if they want to keep up with Winnipeg and Vegas. Winnipeg and Vegas both have far more goals for than the Predators. The Predators coming into the day only had 151. It's not a lot. You need to start getting more points. They are great at home. They have a great home arena. 17-5-3 at home so far. If they can fight to try and get past Winnipeg, they might be able to get some home ice heading into the playoffs, and that could really help them out. They have 3 less games played than Winnipeg so far. That is a big deal for them. They need those games because they need to make up points and they need to go catch Winnipeg. Speaking of, number 3, Winnipeg Jets. A good Canadian team, finally. The Jets are really looking good, and I think they're in the mix to potentially go for that cup. I don't know if this is their year, but this is definitely the best they've looked in a very long time. Definitely a deep postseason run. I believe they should at least get through the first round. They need to make sure they lock down the division as much as they can. They also only played 23 games at home, and they're 18-3-2 in those games. That is quite good. If they can continue to play like that at home for the 18 home games they've got left, they're going to end the postseason as the number 1 team in the Pacific, or in the Central, and they're going to absolutely mollywop some teams in that Central, or in the West, because they're going to have 4 games at home no matter what. That's a big deal for a team like Winnipeg. They need those games. And heading into number 2, we will see how many fans are going to be angered by this. Tampa Bay, number 2. You can really almost put Tampa or Vegas at 1 and 2. Both are struggling a little bit recently. Tampa is 6-4-0 in the last 10. Vegas is 5-3-2. Now the difference I do think is Vegas is getting some clutch points in the close games. Vegas is either getting points by winning or not getting points by losing and losing big. They've got to start getting points again. They need to play for distance between them and Boston because Boston's been closing the gap slowly and methodically. They need to lock down that number 1 seed in the East because if they draw the easiest foe in the East, if they're going to the postseason drawing a Philly or the Islanders or the Rangers or please Carolina, they're going to have a really favorable matchup. But it sort of looks like they're just content to float to April. I mean, they're getting into the postseason. They're getting 17 more points and get to 90, and they'll be fine. But are they content now? Because if they're content, Boston's just going to pass them by. And Tampa going down to the 2 seed could be everything they need to lose that number 1 spot. That cup spot. We'll see, though. Number 1, no introduction, the 34-13-4 Vegas Golden Knights. Honestly, the Knights being this good is basically the reason I started to really get back into the NHL. They're so interesting and so fun to watch. They are starting to show some signs of normalcy and not being this mythological expansion team. I said before, 5-3-2 in the last 10. Just got destroyed by the Wild, 5-2. I mean, granted it was in Minnesota, but still. When they're at home, they are dangerous. 19-5 at home with 17 games left. That is great. If they can keep those games winning, they can lock up number 1 over Winnipeg. And if they go into the postseason with number 1 and they're drawing like Colorado or Minnesota or LA or Calgary, that's a good matchup for them because they're going to be able to go in and cruise through them. I think they're going to get to postseason. I think they're going to cruise through round one pretty easily, no matter who their foe is. But if they lose any games, they could easily lose some ground. They've got to make sure they're winning games. Keep winning the home games. Win where you can on the road. Take advantage of the bad teams you get to play. When you're in the Pacific, you've got some bad teams. Lockdown number one in the West. That's the first step for Vegas. So some predictions for the rest of the year. These are just baseline stuff. Nothing real creative here. In the East, I've got Tampa taking on Washington in the final. I think Tampa's going to go into the postseason with the 1 seed. I think Washington is going to take the Metro and go in with the 2 seed. I think Boston is just going to miss passing Tampa by a couple points, and I think that's going to prove costly. I think Boston taking the 3, drawing a Pittsburgh or New Jersey in that first round is going to prove lethal. And I think Boston's actually going to end up losing in the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs. And I think we're going to have Tampa-Washington. I think Washington finally breaks the curse, gets to the third round, gets to the final, and unfortunately I think Ovechkin just runs out of luck there against a really good Tampa team, a really hot Tampa team, and Tampa's able to get through. I see Nashville continuing their hot streak, and I see Vegas continuing it on the west side. Vegas has just looked so good all season. I just don't see a way they're not the number 1 team in the West, and I don't see a way they don't get to the final. I mean, if they can just keep playing the way they have, they're playing out of their minds. If they can keep playing the way they have, I think they can be so happy with the season where they make it to the Cup final. I do think Tampa wins the Cup. But Vegas, I just think Vegas is going to run out of steam at some point. But Tampa, I don't think Tampa's going to run out of steam. I think Tampa's got what it takes to win. But we'll see. Both teams are very good. It's going to be a really good postseason. Hopefully Carolina gets to experience losing 4-0 to Tampa. Anyways, yeah, that's basically the video. I know it was long and rambly and really long, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I didn't cover that maybe you'd like me to. Give me some information. I don't know a lot about the NHL yet. I'm still learning, but I'd love to learn as much as I can, and I really appreciate any advice that you guys give me. Thank you all for watching, and I appreciate it.